Chances are your company's marketing efforts could be producing better results. We're here to help make your marketing smarter. Welcome to Marketing Cupcakes, bringing you the latest in marketing analytics, data science techniques, integration challenges, guerrilla marketing techniques, and more. Here are your hosts of Marketing Cupcakes, Dave and James Gilbert.
Okay, I think we're good to go. So welcome to another episode of Marketing Cupcakes. I'm your host, Dave Gilbert, and James is also on the line here. And we're really excited to have Dave Vacanti with us, who is the CEO and founder of Magic Robot. And today we're going to be talking about how to attribute revenue with campaigns that have multiple touch points. And that's a real challenge that as a marketer we face today with so many different technologies that we use in marketing and just so many different ways to reach out to consumers and to our customers. So Dave, thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you on, and it's funny because your background is exactly in line with the title of today's podcast. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your background and a little bit about Magic Robot?
Sure, great. I've been working with SaaS cloud-based applications for the last over 10 years, 12 years, and specifically working a lot in sales and marketing operations, specifically a lot with Salesforce.com. And so Magic Robot is a business where we took a lot of my inventions and have been, trying to share them with other organizations where Salesforce may be a little too vanilla in certain areas. And so Magic Robot's campaign influence analyzer and contact role creator really helps, for the most part, business-to-business organizations connect all their campaign data to their opportunity data so that you can really see the revenue that's being produced or not produced by a lot of marketing's campaign activity in Salesforce.
Gotcha. Which is huge. It's huge, absolutely, because, trying to connect campaigns is just such a pain. And so, Dave, what were you doing before? So were you programming all of this before you came up with Magic Robot?
Yeah, so really started as a Salesforce administrator in about 2004, 2005. And so kind of grew up with the platform as, Salesforce was expanding capabilities and, found myself challenged with, a lot of business challenges. And it got to be where, configuration wasn't enough and Salesforce introduced Apex. And things like Visualforce. And so, ended up doing a lot of development to build solutions, that were sort of niche for certain sets of Salesforce's customer base, but really ended up, doing a lot in sort of the business-to-business sales and marketing operations arena.
Okay, cool. So, I'm really interested to know what are some of the gaps that you've seen as you've developed Magic Robot, and maybe one of the reasons you developed Magic Robot, that you've seen with marketing technology and data models, and how have you dealt with integrations with different technologies?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's really the crux of a lot of problems. It has to do with the data model and the integrations. And I think I can certainly speak to Salesforce better than other CRMs for sure. But with regard to Salesforce and any of the great marketing automation platforms that plug into it, the key attribute of that data model that really connects all the campaign data in the marketing automation platform to all the sales results that obviously ultimately reside in Salesforce is there's an expectation that the sales representatives or the business development reps are going to create on every Salesforce opportunity a contact role for any contact that might have marketing data on them. And so the expectation is that you're going to have this army of people over huge data sets over long periods of time manually responsible for all the cache attribution of all the marketing data. So, if you think about all the different marketing automation platforms, they have just excellent reporting, excellent analytics on, the sort of pre-sales funnel metrics, like number of sends, opens, click-throughs, what's your best content, all that stuff is there. But then because sales reps aren't consistently putting in manually this contact role attribute in Salesforce, it drops off a cliff, and it looks like almost every single campaign is a complete dog, and attributes it has zero effect on your pipeline, and that's simply not true. And so the solve for Magic Robot, there's more to it than this, but the key thing is to automatically create with a program these contact role records on these Salesforce opportunities to make that connection. And then what that really does is it flips on the lights in whichever marketing automation platform our clients have, where they go from sort of zero cache opportunity data to all of a sudden it all lights up and you can see all those opportunities. And then you can finally see the spectrum of effectiveness. Some campaigns are really good at helping reps find and win business, and others are not as effective. And you can finally make those determinations.
Yeah, and that's so big in today's marketplace. I mean, being able to look at the whole picture of where someone's coming from and how they're going down, actually becoming a sell, it's just key. I mean, I think a lot of companies would struggle if they weren't able to connect those dots. So it's a huge need that I think a lot of people have. James, do you have anything on that?
Yeah, I also think that you're bridging an important gap that exists and has existed for such a long time within marketing and sales, and that's the gap that exists between those two departments and how you hand it off and how you attribute everything. I know that there's been several companies that I've worked for that struggle with attribution, and it's something that is really hard. So can you tell some of the challenges that you've seen that people have faced and that companies have faced when they try to implement an attribution model?
Sure. So by far the biggest thing that happens is, especially with Magic Robot, we actually provide with the application multiple, actually 5 different models of attribution. And so unquestionably, there is a learning curve associated with, you go from having sort of no data to all of a sudden having just almost too much. And, navigating what's most important for the business and how to choose the attribution model that they really want to focus in on is sort of the first step in making sense of it. And so most, if not really all of our clients that come to us have had, been sort of starved for data in terms of what campaigns help us find and win opportunities. And even if they've been really diligent, like if the marketing team goes on a daily basis and sets, a single campaign as being the primary campaign for a Salesforce opportunity, and they do it manually by hand and they craft that, it's just showing them, a one-to-one relationship. You're just saying, okay, we're just going to say this opportunity was sourced by this campaign. And it's ignored the entire history of any other campaign, interaction that might have taken place from any of the other people at that organization over, a long period of time. It might be, depending on how sophisticated, the product is that's being sold and how much research it takes to even approach a sales cycle, we could be talking about years of data sort of leading up to that. And then, again, it's like, oh, well, we're just going to credit this one campaign. And so by far, everyone's most desirous to see multi-touch attribution, and, the topic of the day here. And so the Magic Robot model that they always use is our multi-touch attribution model where all the credit is evenly split between the different campaign responses that led up to the opportunity. And so they always use that. And there's a little bit of a learning curve, finding out why are we getting partial credit, for opportunities like this campaign has generated 0.2 opportunities and things like that. So there's a little bit of a learning curve there, but it's pretty simple when you understand it. But then when you try to pile these other models on top of it, like, the first response model, what was the first response in the string of campaigns that led to a rep creating an opportunity? Or the last response model. When you have all that data, it's like, where do you start? And so oftentimes our clients will start with the multi-touch attribution model because that's the thing that they've really been starved for. And then they choose one of the other models to kind of layer onto it because depending on what traditionally they have perceived as their challenges in marketing in terms of being able to generate opportunities. So sometimes it's they want that, what was that qualifying moment, the last touch moment that really pushed them over the edge to say, yeah, we have a problem here, we should talk. Or more, if they're having trouble generating any type of activity, they look at that first response model a lot to say, all right, we're having trouble just even having meaningful conversations as much as we want to. What's the campaign that generally, really helps us get going? So again, we try to keep it, keep things really targeted and keep them focused on what their traditional challenges have been, why they think they haven't, generated as much of revenue as they want. And then they're able to sort of expand it. Their ability to manage all that information as their sort of life cycle as a client continues. But the other thing that we tell them is sort of a hint in how to deal with the different viewpoints that you can get once you sort of activate this stuff is if you're generally using that multi-touch model and you're either going to say something about a campaign that, hey, this is either the greatest campaign we ever ran or this is the absolute worst campaign we ever ran. Before you do that and declare it a winner or a loser, go check it out from the different perspectives of each of the models to make sure you're not missing something. Maybe something doesn't really pull its weight, but it's always or it's generated a lot of opportunity as the last response. So there's something about that messaging or that vehicle that really speaks to people when they're ready to, look at discussing whatever solution or service that the organization has.
And Dave, I feel like that's a really key point too, and that's the whole point of doing multi-touch attribution is really looking at what makes the difference instead of assuming that, oh, it was this great campaign that we did and it just resulted in huge profits. And I think a lot of people tend to do that because I think human nature, we just tend to look at what we're focused on right now. And a lot of times, if you like you said, if you look back over the history, you'll see there's a lot of different touch points, a lot of different things that happened that led up to that conversion, rather than just looking at, oh, the last campaign was the most effective and we just had all this response. But in reality, there's a lot more that goes into it than that.
That's very true. And, it's interesting. The other thing that what you're saying made me think of is another challenge that they have sort of going into it that everyone has is you sort of have a natural bias for certain things. So a lot of times, people ask us like, oh, can we weight things from this really expensive trade show that we do more heavily? Or, it's much more expensive for us to get responses from the C-level executive. Can we weight those higher? And I'm like, philosophically, we say, actually, no, you should not do that because you're bringing your preconceived notions to it, and all you're going to do is prove that those things are as effective as you think they are. And so you want to do the opposite. You want to actually see how they hold water against others.
Yeah, it's funny because I've seen that same thing in other industries where they're, they'll want to prove something because that's the way they've been doing it forever. And so it makes sense to them to say, oh, well, I want to add more weight to this particular item. When in reality, what you're really looking for is you want to know truth. You want to know what actually makes a difference, and you don't want to bias them. And that's where this model really comes into place and really plays a huge key.
Mm-hmm. And what we think too philosophically is like, in terms of once you know those numbers and you can say, okay, these, it seems like this one does pull its weight more. This one, generally is going to be present in creating opportunities more often. Then I think it's appropriate to use the weighting to make projections. Based on our current volume of marketing activity, can we project out what our future opportunity pipeline or wins might look? Then I think it is appropriate to use that weighting. But I think sort of in determining, and if it's like a scientific experiment, you can't go in trying to necessarily prove like that trade show that's super expensive is really pulling its weight. You want to find that out.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So Dave, when you've seen, once you've seen your clients, be a little smarter about tracking the data in the campaigns and really getting that attribution implemented, how have your clients seen that value in Magic Robot? I mean, what's kind of the difference that they start talking to you about?
Right. And that's really the question, right? What a great question, because it's like, okay, what do you actually do with it? So, what we've noticed is that there's sort of a life cycle as part of like the learning curve of the client. And it generally takes a few weeks or a couple of months for them to kind of get to this point. But what we sort of, mostly see most of the time is a client comes in and they just want some information. They just want to like see anything because they've had such a challenge before. And what that often looks like is they want just the simplest top line reporting where they could say, of the opportunities that we created this fiscal year, or that, sales that we gave to sales, or that sales has created, what value, which number, which opportunities were at all influenced by marketing. So just to give the most broad top line metrics, like this stuff was marketing influence and this had no marketing influence. And then obviously, as they progress, but that's always like a key core request or requirement. And then they want to know, all right, which campaigns they're really doing. And so, that's a lot of the stuff that we've talked about, like which ones are doing this. They want to know which opportunities that they've won recently, which campaigns helped generate those, or which campaigns have been generating revenue recently. But then where it starts to become really valuable for them is when they start asking questions like when they've had, say, a vertical or a market segment that they've had difficulty breaking into traditionally. When they start using the analytics that we provide to say, all right, of the last year or two, have generated interest in that vertical or that market segment or whatever it is, which campaigns were the ones that were helping produce that? And, what was the messaging that those campaigns used? And who are the types of contacts that have been receptive to that messaging? And so then they start using it as a tool to drive the kinds of results that, they should be. That's what they're trying to do, is to break into those different markets. And so they need to figure out how to do more of that. And that's where they really start using it. We also see cool benefits in negotiating with vendors that you pay marketing for. So, for example, if you do different trade shows offered by different, vendors or organizations, one of them costs twice as much as the other one, and you get, half the amount of opportunities generally. If you don't have those numbers, it's difficult to have that discussion when negotiating for that booth space. But when you do have the numbers, you can just cite them and say, we did this last year, and I got to tell you, you should be charging me about half or a quarter of what you are for what I'm getting out of it. So you have that sort of bulletproof information that you can use really, actively to help the business, as opposed to just observing stuff that happened in the past.
Yeah, that's a great that's a great added benefit. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, by far. And it's generally like, again, there's like this learning curve. Once get comfortable with using it and, manipulating the data and using it to your advantage, that's when you sort of go into those, the more impactful types of decisions or insight that you can gain from it.
Absolutely. So Dave, I think we're about out of time here. And I just want to thank you again for being on. I mean, I think this is tremendously valuable. I think a lot of companies are really trying to hone in on attribution, multi-touch attribution, and really understanding which of their efforts are making the biggest impact. And so I think having you just discuss this and the things that you've seen and the way that you've created Magic Robot is just hugely valuable. So thank you so much for being here and talking about this today. But before we go,
great, thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, before we go, I would just love to give you the chance to just, tell people where to find Magic Robot, where to find you, and how they can go about implementing it.
Oh, yeah, fantastic. Thanks so much. So you can go to magicrobot.com and see, our website and what the application looks like, some videos. And then we're also on the App Exchange as well. So you just could go to the Salesforce App Exchange and search for Magic Robot. We have a free 90-day trial that's the full functionality of the application, so you can try it out and see what it looks like on your data. And certainly reach out to us, and we're really happy to help. We're always excited to help people get to the bottom of their numbers. So thanks for that.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us today on Marketing Cupcakes, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Marketing Cupcakes, an Endure podcast with your hosts, Dave and James Gilbert. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit marketingcupcakes.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and rate the podcast. We'll catch you next time on Marketing Cupcakes.